This episode of WDW Today is being sponsored by All Star Vacation Homes. And hey, you know what? You go to a resort and, it doesn't matter what resort you're at. There's certain amenities you have to share with other people, like the pool, for instance. What if you had your own resort, your own house, and your own pool? That's right, your own private pool that you can go use anytime, and the only annoying kids in that pool are your annoying kids, assuming you even bring your kids with you. But that's what's great about All-Star Vacation Homes is that they can accommodate different size groups. You can bring maybe 2 to 4 people, or you can bring 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 people. A whole touringplans.com planning contingent can use one house. That's how flexible a typical All-Star Vacation has. And they're going to have so many great amenities to check out. Just visit them online at www.allstarvacationhomes.com for further details.
Bringing the world to your world, this is Walt Disney World Today. Here are Mike Scopa, Len Testa, Mike Newell, and your host, Matt Hochberg.
It's Friday, October 22nd, 2010, and this is episode 789 of WDW Today. I'm Matt Hochberg of StudioCentral.com. Joining me on today's show is Len Testa, co-author of The Unofficial Guide to Walt Disney World. And Len, if you could pick one scene in Spaceship Earth to make fun of Scopa for being old, which one would it be?
It'd be the caveman scene where they're gesticulating wildly that Scopa's the one with all of the crayons.
That's the classic. Can't go wrong with that scene.
No, that's why we call it the Scopa scene, right?
Exactly.
Still, one of my favorite memories, and I don't even know if Mike remembers this. We were riding Spaceship Earth. I think it was reunion last year, and Newell was in a couple cars ahead of me. And you can't hear a lot in there, but all I hear from Newell, a couple cars ahead of me, is "Hiya, Mike."
Hiya, Mike.
That's great. Also joining me on today's show is the aforementioned Mike Newell of Mouse World Radio. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Well, what you have to understand is me and Annette were in that car, and I pressed the Japanese language, so we needed some more entertainment because we couldn't understand what the Japanese Judi Dench was saying.
Japanese Judi Dench.
Try it sometime. It's funny.
I will.
I've tried it in Portuguese. Good times.
Good times.
Also joining us on today's show is Fred Hazelton, Master Statistician for touringplans.com. Welcome to the show, Fred.
Thank you, Matt. Glad to be here.
And on today's show, we're going to be talking about an interesting trip planning topic, rather. And it comes from one of our listeners, Scott Rutullo, who writes, "Hi, my name is Scott Rutullo from Walker, Louisiana, a small town right outside of Baton Rouge. Go Tigers. I love the podcast, like the Mouse World Radio app on my iPhone, and I listen regularly. I'm now a member of touringplans.com and love the unofficial guide."
Okay.
Now on to my question. I'm planning a trip for my family, myself, my wife, and 2 boys, ages 7 and 4, for the last week of May. Missed the free dining by a few days. Don't you love how they put free dining on a holiday week as if the park wasn't already busy? The last time I planned a trip, I used Touring Plans' website to find the best park and choose accordingly. But the closer I got to my trip date and already booked my ADRs, the info changed on me as to which park was going to be the best or worse. So did I misread this, or is it possible that the info can change? And if so, what are your guys' thoughts on making sure you pick, quote, the best park, with the ADR window being back to 180 days? So this kind of got us thinking, how do you plan a trip with, like Scott said, how do you plan a trip 180 days out, because you want to book your dining reservations and everything, but keeping in mind that things more than likely will change in terms of what parks will be the best parks and park hours changing between now and 180 days out and your trip. So, Len, where do we start here? How do you start planning a trip knowing things are going to change?
I call Fred, doesn't everyone? I don't understand.
Yeah.
I don't understand. I barely understand the question. No, really. So, and Fred will clarify this. I was joking before the show started that my entire contribution to tonight's episode is going to be saying Fred, expecting him to answer this. But we based the calendar partly on what happened last year, including the extra magic hours and what we expect the extra magic hour schedule to be, and that's in the absence of any other information, right? That's usually the best guess that anyone can come up with. But Fred probably has more information on this.
Yeah, well, this is one of the problems that we struggle with quite a bit, because we know that we have this challenge that we want to predict things as far into the future as we can, but we're restricted by what we know. And there's been a trend in the past couple of years where Disney will post the park hours 6 months out with sort of a toned down schedule. And we know, or we expect, that when it gets closer to those dates, that those park hours are going to change. In fact, we just saw this week where Disney has updated the park hours for November and December, including both Thanksgiving week and Christmas week. So, this is causing everything to kind of go into the shuffle. And when when you run it through our programs and our models, things, can change. And this is something that we have to kind of, juggle the best that we can. The suggestions that I would make is that the one thing that typically doesn't change is the extra magic hour schedule. So 180 days out, I think, Disney is kind of, once they announce the extra magic hour schedule, they have to stick to it. And I think that's partly because of the 180 days for the dining reservations. So I think what you can do is you definitely know which parks that you're going to be avoiding. It's very rare that something will go, that will say something was going to be avoided and then that'll change in the future. Typically, that's going to stay the same.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, Fred, especially about the extra magic hours. Those things aren't going to change, and it can give you a decent framework to start with. And the best crowd calendar, I mean, it's very rare, correct me if I'm wrong, that if you're using the best park recommendations on touringplans.com, that it's very rare for it to ever pick a extra magic hour park day as the best park, right?
Very rarely. The only exceptions are times like Christmas time, when every day is so crowded that it becomes kind of the lesser of two evils.
Right.
Or when you have, like, in Christmas time, you have back-to-back days where Magic Kingdom, for example, always has extra magic hours. So other than that, yeah, it's typically we wouldn't pick that as the best park. Now, this you have to look at your own planning too. Those recommendations change if you plan to take advantage of extra magic hours. If you're staying on property and you're going to be there for the opening of the extra magic hour morning, for example, then this doesn't apply to you. The reason that we usually say avoid extra magic hours, certainly in the morning, is because most people can't take advantage of it, and therefore they're going to be, they're going to kind of start off the day with a disadvantage.
Right.
So you have to look at your own situation too and plan according to that.
I think Len also mentioned something that's really important, and that's to look at the last year's park hours. One thing that I do on Studio Central is I have the park hours going back to like 2002. And I even started listing the historical Fantasmic schedule. And the reason for that is because, a lot of people ask me, the park hours are X and whatever they are. I mean, is that going to stay? And I think the best thing I always say is you got to look back at what they were last year, maybe even the year before that, just to get an idea of what to expect, especially if you're looking forward to even beyond the 6-month window. If you're looking at, let's say you want to, it's right now, it's October 22nd, and you want to plan your trip for November 2011, right? Well, that's not going to, you're not going to be able to book ADRs until, 6 months out from that point, but at least you can get an idea of framework or something, because generally speaking, while the park hours may change, a little bit, generally speaking, the November park hours don't really change all that much from year to year to year. It's generally speaking they're consistent to a point, at least to the point where you can have an idea of what the park hours will be. Meaning, like, Animal Kingdom will be open from only until 6 o'clock, but the Magic Kingdom is usually open until about 8 or 9 o'clock. Things like that as a means. I think that is important to be able to look historically, and there are different resources beyond the studios that you can find online that will list the park hours from previous years as well.
Yeah, in fact, we've had to do this at Touring Plans for our crowd calendar. I was telling you before, Matt, that when Disney first announced its December schedule, back in the spring, I guess, when I took those park hours and ran them through our modeling system, it was telling me that Christmas was going to be, 5s and 6s, maybe the odd 7. Mm-hmm. And I said, whoa, this doesn't make sense. And then when you take a look, it's because they have these shortened hours, that they're saying that the Magic Kingdom is going to close at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock during Christmas week, when we know from historical hours going back, 10 years that, the park hours are extended almost more than any other time of year, usually during the Christmas week. So we kind of have to anticipate that now. And only recently, when they updated the park hours for Thanksgiving week and Christmas week, can we say, okay, now we believe that these are going to be the actual hours used, and run things through that.
Hey, Len, what's your recommendations? What's your advice to someone who's emailing you or calling you and saying, Len, I want to book my restaurant reservations, my ADRs for my trip. It's about 180 days out, or it's going to be 180 days out very soon. I mean, do you recommend just booking everything and knowing perhaps that things may change, or are you more of a wait and see kind of approach? What's your thoughts on that?
So usually when it takes us about a day or so to get the calendar updated once Disney posts the hours. Sometimes we get a little bit of advance notice, and we'll have it, on the same day that the 180 days the 180 days are posted on Disney's website. I would say if it's critically important for something like Le Cellier, for example, which you pretty much have to do at 7 a.m. on the 180 days out, go ahead and get the reservation and use whatever we have on the calendar that's the recommendation for that day. It's going to be our best guess. It's the best publicly available information that's out there. So I would say use that. You could also have a backup reservation at another park. So something like you could make a reservation at Epcot and then make another reservation, let's say at Magic Kingdom, same time, same day, just on a different phone call.
Wow, and you are. I'm sure there's some people that are yelling at their iPods, iPhones, droids for the simple. I don't disagree with you, but the prospect of multiple bookings.
But you could cancel one, right? I'm not saying you keep them, right? Once it's an insurance thing. Once you're done with it.
Well, of course, but I'm just playing devil's advocate here, and that's that if you make a reservation for Le Cellier and then you make a reservation at Brown Derby the same day, same time, right. That if I go to make a reservation for Brown Derby, they get sold. It says it's sold out, and whether or not you actually do follow through with that, maybe you're going to follow through with that a week before, and canceling one of them. I mean, that's the argument against that. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I understand.
The other thing you could do is that we have a tool on Touring Plans now that has the crowd level for each individual park. Mm-hmm. And one thing that I often tell our readers when they email in with questions about this is that before you go changing your ADRs, just take a quick peek to see how different the crowds are going to be for those parks. So if you booked an ADR at Epcot because Epcot was recommended, and now we're recommending the studios, the difference between the crowds at the studios and Epcot might be really small. And so, especially if you're booking, like Len said, Le Cellier, which is tough to get, it's a lot harder to book an ADR than it is to deal with a crowd that's a little bit busier. So, I often recommend people to hold off, and it might actually be worth your while to keep that ADR, go to the park. It's a little bit busier, because with the touring plan, the impact is not going to be that much anyway. So.
Yeah, I mean, well, that brings up a good question, Fred. What's the threshold for you to say you gotta abandon ship, you gotta jump ship and change your park plans? I mean, is it like a 4 to a 5, a 4 to a 6, a 6 to an 8? I mean, what kind of a, how big of a jump would it take for you to say, okay, you probably need to change what the best park is, or what park you should change your plans for that park day?
Well, it's got to be at least a 2 full point jump. So it would have to go from a 4 to a 6 or a 5 to a 7. If for no other reason, then our estimates are accurate to within 1 index point anyway. So if we say it's going to be a 4, it's probably going to be, we're pretty sure it's going to be between a 3 and a 5. So if it doesn't go up more than 1, then it's probably not going to be worth it for you to reschedule your ADRs, especially if it's ADRs that are hard to get.
Yeah, I think Len mentioned that, and that's if you're booking like Le Cellier or Cinderella's Royal Table, Ohana, Crystal Palace, those kinds of very popular restaurants, I think it's important to just book them. You may have to bite the bullet a little bit at the end, but at least you'll have something. It's better than nothing, and that's why there's park hopping options, and you can make the best. And like I think you said that, Fred, a good touring plan will not negate, but it'll totally help with the effects of an increased crowd. Level of
for sure. If you're following a touring plan, if I'm traveling with my family and following a touring plan, I don't really care if it's a 6 or a 5 or a 4 or a 3. It's all going to feel almost the same because I'm following that plan. Now, if I know I'm going to be kind of touring ad hoc and just going for half a day, or I want to tour at my own sort of leisure, well, then it's going to be much more important to make sure I pick the right park.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point there, and the I know that a lot of people can get a little wrapped up with the crowd calendar and the recommendations, and they obviously they make sense and everything, but like you said, you have to kind of take it, understand that this isn't the end all be all, and that if you do end up in a park that is not the best park or even the worst park recommendation, it's not the end of the world. It's just you can still have a great time in the parks. You can still go to those restaurants and have a good time. You just have to work a little bit harder than in the other parks. Is that right?
Oh, for sure. The exception would be if it's really busy. I think if you're looking at days that are between 8 and 10, there can be a real big difference in your experience if you don't go to the best park. So I think in that sense that you have to weigh that as well. If we're talking about plans that have changed for Christmas, right around Christmas or Thanksgiving or President's Day week or something like that, then that kind of sways thing in the direction of changing your ADRs because you want to avoid those parks. But you could say the opposite too, that if you're talking about low season, if these are ADRs in September, chances are it's really not going to be worth it. Just go to the park that's a little bit busier. It's not, a 3 is a 3. I mean, anybody can handle a 3.
One, were you going to say something?
No, I think exactly that. I mean, if it's a weekday in September, really the park that you're going to choose, unless you're going like at 10 a.m. on a day when it's got morning extra magic hours and you don't have a touring plan, that's not really going to matter that much.
Cool. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for today. I want to thank our sponsor, All-Star Vacation Homes. And hey, look, when you're planning your next trip to Walt Disney World and you're picking your park days and you're picking your restaurants, make sure you also take a good look at an All-Star Vacation Home because there's lots of great options there. Typical All-Star Vacation Home features amenities like your own private pool that I mentioned earlier, full kitchens, game rooms, movie theaters, full bedrooms for everybody, bathrooms for everybody. These are and these are well furnished, very, very nice. Check them out online at www.allstarvacationhomes.com. If you want to find our older episodes, read our show notes, or send us your comments, visit us at wdwtoday.com. Don't forget, our live show is this Sunday. That's right, Sunday, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. All the details at wdwtoday.com. For Len Testa, Mike Scopa, Mike Newell, and Fred Hazelton, I'm Matt Hochberg. We'll see you on the next show.
Stupid Judy, stupid energy.
This has been a production of Mouse World Radio.